And he left the room, and I said to Danny, my husband, I said, isn't he the doctor that said I won't even make it through the night? And Danny said, you couldn't possibly have heard him. He said it outside the room, down the hallway. And I said, that's funny. I saw him and heard him. And so everybody was surprised. But in 4 days, 5 days, instead of getting worse, I just started getting better and better, and I wanted to sit up. And then my tumors started to just reduce and shrink, because I had multiple tumors the size of golf balls. They started to shrink, and in about 5 days to a week, they shrunk by about 70% in size. And the doctors were shocked. They couldn't explain it. They kept doing test after test after test, and they just could not explain what was going on. And in 5 weeks, they let me go home from the hospital cancer-free. They could find no trace of cancer.
Peace and riches blessings. I am Michael B. Beckwith, the host of Take Back Your Mind. Peace and blessings, everyone, and welcome to Take Back Your Mind. As you know, I'm Michael B. Beckwith, the founder of the Agape International Spiritual Center and your host right here on Take Back Your Mind podcast, where I have the privilege and the honor of having great conversations with great people in their own way who have had their heart opened, their mind no longer hijacked by the world of appearances, and are making a mighty difference on the planet, being a beneficial presence in their own unique way. Today, I have Anita Moorjani with me. Anita, welcome to Take Back Your Mind.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. And thank you so much for having me on your show, on your podcast.
Absolutely. For those of you who may not know who she is, let me just break it down for you a little bit. Renowned author and spiritual seeker, known for her transformative journey beyond the brink of death. While living in Hong Kong, Anita battled end-stage cancer before experiencing a remarkable near-death experience, or NDE. I sometimes call them near-life experiences that shifted her perspective on life totally. Her best-selling memoir, Dying to Be Me, chronicles her profound journey in miraculous healing. Its popularity established her as a premier NDE expert, a beacon of inspiration, and I can attest to that. We've been together a few times doing conferences at the same time, so it's been always wonderful to be in her presence. She's a beacon of inspiration that travels the world sharing her insights on self-love, forgiveness, consciousness, and the interconnectedness of all things. Her teachings empower others to embody the highest versions of themselves and live a vibrant, authentic life. She continues to be a guiding light in the realm of spiritual growth, development, and unfoldment. Anita, we've seen each other, but listen, when did you notice your first shift in consciousness after returning to your body? Because I know you can give us a little bit of the fact that your body was riddled with cancer.
Yes.
You actually died.
Yes. I was, my organs had shut down and everything. So I'd left my body, and I was in that state of being without my body for 30 some hours. It was 30 some hours before I actually came out, that I came out of the coma. And while I was in that state, I entered into what it felt like it was a gradual expansion, kind of like as if I was leaving my body gradually, trying to understand what's happening. Oh, I'm not in my body. Oh, I feel amazing. I felt light and free, and all the pain was gone. And most importantly, the fear was gone, because I had cancer for 4 years. And those 4 years were riddled with fear of the disease, fear of dying, fear of the treatments for the disease, because those can be very harsh. I feared all of it. And so I was in so much fear and pain and discomfort. And here I was now leaving my body, and all of that was being left behind as well. So I felt this feeling that, wow, there's no fear. There's no pain. There's no discomfort. I feel amazing. I feel powerful, better than I've ever felt in my physical life ever before. And
Wow.
I felt this incredible clarity. I started to understand how it was that I had got cancer, or why I had got it, and how every thought and decision and choice I had made in my life had led to that point of me lying there in that hospital bed. It
Mm.
was like this big state of clarity, and it was like, oh, that's how. And I understood from that perspective that we have more autonomy over our lives and even our illnesses, the good things and the bad things, than we realize. We think we are victims of our illnesses. And this is not to blame anyone who's ill.
Right.
But I realize just as much as we take credit for the good things, we do contribute to the not so good things that happen in our lives. We're not just victims where things happen to us. No, we do play a part in it. The clarity was just incredible. And then I felt the presence of other beings, my loved ones, my dad who had died 10 years prior. And all I felt from them was unconditional love. Even the people who I feared and who I did not have a good relationship with in physical life, who were now on the other side.
Yes.
Like my dad, I'd had a very turbulent relationship with him. All I felt from him as in spirit was pure unconditional love.
Wow. Right. Because I remember when we've been together a few times, and you talked about your dad, and you talked about, you actually had a conversation with him. And
Yes,
that
I did.
conversation, he described the fact that even though you guys had a turbulent relationship, he was too imprisoned by the Indian culture,
Yes,
which allowed him to be very upset with you that you didn't go through with that wedding. And that wedding provided the context of you having some kind of shame and guilt, which also provided the thoughts that helped produce cancer. But tell us a little bit more about that conversation and how you ultimately decided to come back, because you had a choice. You didn't have to come back, from what I understand.
exactly. I didn't have to come back. So my dad and I, we had this very turbulent relationship because my parents are Hindus, they're Indian, but they sent me to a British school with British teachers and British classmates. And so I became immersed in British culture, including their pop culture and everything. But my parents, my dad particularly, not so much my mom, my dad was very strict, and he wanted to groom me for an arranged marriage, which is normal in his culture. And I rebelled against it. But then one day I gave in because I found I was getting tired of rebelling against my dad and the culture. I gave in and I agreed to an arranged marriage. And I was engaged for months, and I was being trained, like told how I would have to learn to cook all his favorite foods and all these things. And then as we got closer to the wedding, I started to feel, I can't believe this is going to be the rest of my life, because I had these dreams. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to earn my own money so that I would have independence, because in our culture, particularly at that time, you don't work. I wasn't allowed to work or study abroad or do any of those things. And my dad told me that it would be up to my husband after I was married. So a woman stays at home with her dad until she gets married, and then she becomes her husband's responsibility. So as we were nearing the wedding, I thought, oh my God, I will never have any freedom in my entire life to do what I want to do. And 3 days before the wedding, I remember I was sobbing and I ran away. I just didn't show up for the wedding, and it brought so much shame to my fiance's family and my family. And if you know anything about Indian weddings and the Indian community, they were all really upset at me, and they shamed my parents, saying my parents had spoiled me, and they told my parents that no Indian man would marry me after what I had done. And so here I was now. So I'd always felt I'd let my dad down. I was never the daughter he wanted. I spent a lifetime trying to win his approval, and I have never won his approval. So now here I was on the other side with my dad, spirit to spirit. And I expected to be judged. I expected the same sentiment, but all I felt from him was pure love. And he wanted me to know that just as much as I had felt that I was a victim of my culture, he was a victim of the same culture. He wanted me to know that he loved me unconditionally, and he had always loved me. But he was brought up to believe that the only way he can show love was by making sure that I was taken care of and given to a good husband.
So after that encounter, you had a choice of whether to stay in this state of pure clarity, freedom from pain, or to go back to the body temple. And you had a conversation with him about that, from what I understand.
Yeah, so I felt I reached this point where I had this choice, and I realized that if I stayed there now, I wouldn't be able to turn back if I went any further. But I wasn't. But I felt as though I was being encouraged to come back. It was like I was getting the message from my dad, and it was like a general understanding as well. Because, it's so difficult on that side. We have no physical bodies. We're not communicating with our vocal cords. It really is like his spirit impressing upon me what it wanted me to know. And so I realized that I had a choice. I wasn't being forced to go back, but that if I didn't go back, I would be missing out on some of the gifts that were waiting for me. And I thought, why would I want to go back? I mean, it's so beautiful here. I was suffering on the other side. My family were suffering, taking care of me. Yeah. I was married at this point to my wonderful husband, Danny, who was helping to take care of me. And I felt if I stayed there and did not come back into physical life, I would be relieving everyone of this misery, and I would be happy because I was struggling. But it was in that moment that I realized, and also my dad wanted me to know, that first of all, my husband and my purpose was linked. And if I didn't go back, he wouldn't be able to complete his purpose either.
Wow.
And that if I chose to go back, because now that I know the truth of who we really are, that we are more than our bodies, we're powerful beings, and the truth of the trajectory that contributed to me getting sick, that if I chose to go back with this understanding, that my body would heal very, very quickly. And
you knew that before you came back?
Yes.
Understanding? Oh, wow.
A very clear understanding. And it was so clear. And I knew that I had a future before me. And this is the most interesting thing, is that I was even shown a glimpse of a future of me standing on stage with an audience and speaking. But I had no idea what I was going to be speaking with them about, because I was never a speaker. I was someone who was a people pleaser, who was super shy. And so me seeing that was so out of character for me. I thought, there's no way. But it was like I was being shown, this is what's waiting for you. You have a mission, go and fulfill it. And it surprised me. And so then I made the decision to come back. And it was my dad who then said, go back and live your life fearlessly. So during my lifetime, it was my dad who instilled fear in me. But in death, it was my dad who released the fear from me. And that was when I made the choice to come back. And so I felt myself coming back into my body, and my physical body started to open its eyes, my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And my family were around me. And I'd been in the coma for a little over 30 hours. And my family were around me, and they were surprised that I was opening my eyes because the doctors had said, these are my final hours, and that I was dying. And I started to say, Dad is here. I'm not going to be, I'm going to be fine. I'm not dying. I'm going to be fine. And so they were surprised because I was also very, very wobbly. I wasn't, it was like I was half here and half there, and I was drowsy, and I was really all drugged up and everything. So they called the doctor, and I was saying that to the doctor as well. I said, I'm going to be fine. And the doctor said, oh, it's probably just the drugs talking, he said to my family. But then I started to say things that had happened in the room and down the hallway, which I couldn't possibly have known. But I had been able to hear all their dialogues and everything. So after the doctor walked out of the room, because he told my family that don't raise your hopes because she's still critical. This is just the drugs messing with her mind. And he left the room, and I said to Danny, my husband, I said, isn't he the doctor that said I won't even make it through the night? And Danny said, you couldn't possibly have heard him. He said it outside the room, down the hallway. And I said, that's funny. I saw him and heard him. And so everybody was surprised. But in 5 days, instead of getting worse, I just started getting better and better, and I wanted to sit up. And then my tumors started to just reduce and shrink, because I had multiple tumors the size of golf balls. They started to shrink, and in about 5 days to a week, they shrunk by about 70% in size. And the doctors were shocked. They couldn't explain it. They kept doing test after test after test, and they just could not explain what was going on. And in 5 weeks, they let me go home from the hospital cancer-free. They could find no trace of cancer.
So this is fantastic. Your testimony that you're explaining, the conversation with your dad, I guess there was some forgiveness that happened at that level.
Yes.
And then his saying that his mission was connected to your mission, that you had to go. And then you saw pictures of your future.
Yes.
I know you have an interesting story about how that future began in terms of you writing something on the email about your experience, and then what happened after that.
Yes. So firstly, that future at that time, even when I came back from the NDE, I was euphoric. I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And I was really euphoric, but I thought, I have no idea how that future is going to manifest, because I've never been a speaker, a writer, nothing. And I am probably the least qualified person to be that, because I was always somebody who was, as I said, a people pleaser. But because this had happened, I wanted the world to know. And so I started to write it. Like, my friends knew in my community, I was telling them, they were fascinated by it. But doctors were being a little bit dismissive. Even though they had the medical records, they said, oh, it was a spontaneous remission. It happens, 1 in a million, and you were really lucky. And I said, no, I had this experience. I touched the other side. And they said, no, that was the drugs messing with your mind. So I had to get it out of my system somehow. It was like a calling. You have to put it out there. You just have to put it out there. So all I did was I wrote it all out. And then I submitted it to an NDE site. And when they received it, it turned out that the owner of the site was Dr. Jeffrey Long, who is an oncologist, a radiologist oncologist. And he was fascinated by my story. So he asked me if I'd mind sending him a few things. He asked me more questions to just make sure that it really did happen, and to verify it. And I sent him a couple of the pertinent medical reports, and he said, oh, wow, this is incredible. This is really incredible. And he asked my permission to put it on the home page of his website. And I said, absolutely. He did not put my full name, just out of respect. He just put Anita M's NDE. So it went viral, and I wasn't expecting that. And somebody passed it on to Wayne Dyer. And so now Wayne Dyer, as you know, you know him, and I know he introduced us. He is such a busy man that gets tons and tons of mail and email and letters and books and everything sent to him. Somebody printed this out off the internet, and it was 20 pages long. That's how long it was, single line spacing. And I think they either handed it to him or they sent it to him. Normally, when he receives a pile of stuff, they sit on his desk, and he told me this later. He said, I'll read the first few lines, and then I'll see if it doesn't grip me, then I put it away. I just have to get rid of it because I don't know what to do with all the mail that I get.
Right.
And he said, but when I started reading this, he said, it gripped me all the way to the end. And he said, I swear nothing else I've received has done this to me. He said, it gripped me. I read all the way to the end. And he's the one that told me it's 20 pages printed out. And he said, immediately after reading it, I called my publishers at Hay House. I called Reed Tracy and said, we have to track down this woman. She lives in Hong Kong. Track her down. We have to publish her book. And so Hay House somehow managed to track me down. Here's the synchronicity. Their email landed in my mailbox on my birthday. And so the email said, we are, I'm the chief editor at Hay House, and Wayne Dyer has discovered your story and has asked us to track you down. And we would like to invite you to write a book, and we'll publish it. So I read it, and I started crying because I thought, oh my God, this is unfolding what I saw on the other side.
Did you believe it when it first came in on your birthday? Did you think it was a prank, or
I thought it was a prank. I thought it was a prank. And I wrote back and I said, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. Are you sure this is not a prank? This is not a scam? I said, are you sure this is not a scam? And she wrote back right away, and she said, no, this is not a scam. You can look me up. I am so chief editor at Hay House. And then I looked at the email address, and it all lined up. And I said, I wrote back and I said, oh my God, do you know it's my birthday? And I said, I'm crying right now. What do I have to do next? And she wrote back and she said, well, happy birthday. I'm sending you a book contract, and you just have to write a brief proposal and sign the contract, and that's it. So that was really it was so incredible how that happened. And you know what? Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you about your first time speaking. How did you feel when you had that opportunity? Because now you'd seen the future, but now it's unfolding. So, and you had never spoken before. So how did you feel? What happened with you and Wayne?
So then what happened is, just before the launch of my book, Hay House, so I was living in Hong Kong, remember? So Hay House reached out. The people at Hay House said, we would like to invite you to come to LA, to Pasadena. Wayne Dyer is doing an event, and we want to launch your book at this event. It was an I Can Do It event. And they said, you will be a guest on Wayne Dyer's segment on his speech. He's the key speaker, the opener for the event, and he will bring you up on stage, and we would like to fly you there. And so they sent me this email. I was like, oh my God, you're kidding. So I fly to LA, and the event's at Pasadena, and they tell me I have to sit. And I met Wayne, and everything. It was beautiful. And so I'm sitting in the front row. He's on stage, and there are 3,000 people in the audience, and there's live streaming as well. And so I'm sweating sitting there. And then he's on stage. He starts to tell the story. He's already started talking for 20, 30 minutes. And then he says, and then I recently read this amazing story of this beautiful, miraculous healing about this woman from Hong Kong. And he starts to tell it. And then he goes, wait, let me do one better than that. We've flown her here, and let me bring her up on stage and let her tell her own story. You know how amazing he is at storytelling. Right. So he's like, Anita Moorjani, come up on stage. And so I came up on stage and I'm given this mic and I'm standing there looking out at this sea of 3,000 people. And I was shaking. I was literally quivering. I thought, oh my God. And it was deja vu. This is what I had seen in the
Right.
NDE.
Wow.
And so I was shaking. And then he looks at me shaking and he goes, what, are you scared? And I said, yes, of course I am. I've never spoken on stage and not in front of 3,000 people. He said, you've been dead and back. What have you got to be scared about? And that's when I actually said to him, actually being dead is easier than public speaking. And he started laughing at that. And then I shared my story and you know, and then he kept telling people in his audiences, if you read just one book, read Anita Moorjani's book. If you can only buy one book, don't buy mine, buy hers. And then, yeah, he made sure that my, he said, I am, as long as I'm alive, I'm going to keep talking about your story. That's him. I miss him.
His story is amazing. You brought back so much wisdom from the other side. I mean, if someone were in the middle of a diagnosis right now, how would you share with them to begin their journey? I mean, obviously they may be on a path of regular medicine, but what would you say to them having gone through what you've gone through?
So first of all, I would want them to know, you know, I would definitely not encourage them to get off their regular medicine path, but I would want them to know there is so much they can do internally that can really speed up the process of healing and that can really help them and find they don't need the medicines eventually or need less of them. But so I would want them to know that healing, their illness is not, they're not a victim of their illness. And that's not to say to blame themselves for getting ill, but they're absolutely not a victim. There are many different reasons why our bodies get sick. But the one thing is that illnesses, chronic illnesses, I'm not talking about something acute or an emergency, you know, emergency acute is one thing, but something like cancers, heart disease that kind of grows over time and gets worse and worse. We see them only as physical illness and we see ourselves as a victim as if it just happens to us. That's not the case. These illnesses actually start from the inside out. And they start from, I'm going to use my terminology, they start from what I call the esoteric level or the soul level. And if we don't listen to the calling of our soul, that message gets louder and it travels down through into our emotional system. And if we don't listen to our emotions, it starts to travel down into our mind. It starts to mess with our minds. If you suppress, so it starts with suppressing what the soul came here for. And so we suppress that, it impacts our emotions. Then we suppress our emotions just to get on with our lives. So as you suppress your emotions, it starts to affect you mentally, your mental ability. And you suppress that, that's when it starts to affect you physically. And then you get these little calls. And then if all you do is address these physical things purely just on the physical, purely just by medicine alone or pharmaceuticals alone, then these messages get louder and louder. So something like a cancer or a chronic heart disease has been festering all the way down for about 6, 7, 8, 10 years before it becomes even terminal. So the thing is, you might think, wow, it's been festering that long. That's a lot. I don't know if I can reverse it. No, the good news is the fact that it takes that long means you don't just get hit with cancer. No, it means that you can take that long to reverse it. And there's a lot you can do to reverse it. But the first thing is you have to want to reverse it. You have to want to live. You have to desire to live. If somebody hates their life and they hate who they are, they hate themselves, they're less likely to create what I call a trajectory for healing. than someone who's willing to look at their life and say, oh, I'm willing to change this. I'm willing to do this. I want to love my life. I
Yes.
do want to live. So
Yes.
there has to be like a willingness to do that, first of all. And then I usually, at my workshops and retreats and all that, and my videos, I teach people how to reverse their trajectory. So I call it a wellness trajectory. So when a doctor gives you a diagnosis, they don't know what the last 10, 15, 20 years of your life has been.
Mm-hmm.
They're giving you a diagnosis based on where you are right now. And this is important for anyone who has a diagnosis to know. They're giving you a diagnosis based on where you are right now at this point in time. And the prognosis is based on your illness carrying on the trajectory that they can see based on their research and their statistics. And it's based on you doing absolutely nothing. But you can choose to do something from this moment. And some of the things I tell people is, an easy one is to start with making some dietary changes. Another one is exercise more. But the ones that we really need to work on is ask yourself, what's my life been like for the last 10 years? Has there been a lot of stress? How can I actually reduce the stress? Has there been a lot of fear? For me, fear is a big one. How do I reduce the fear? Now, a big way of reducing fear is by increasing love. Fear is the opposite of love. When I crossed over, the biggest thing I noticed was the fear was gone. The fear of death, the fear of illness, the fear of the drugs, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of displeasing people, winning other people's approval, the fear of, today we have a huge fear about the foods we eat. People are like, oh my gosh, this has got pesticides, this has got that, this has got that.
Right.
Which is, so all those fears, they actually create a lot of stress in your body. Right. So ask yourself, have I got more fear and stress in my body than love? The more you can increase doing things that you love, the more you can increase the joy, the more the fear starts to dissipate. And a way to do that is, when you feel the fear, when you feel the stress, ask yourself, what is this stress? Where is it coming from? And what would I like to see instead? In other words, if you're like, oh my God, I'm really stressed out because I hate this stuff that's happening. I hate what's going on in our food. And if you keep focusing on what you hate that's happening, whatever it is, whether it's something that's happening in the world, whether it's the food, whether it's your body, the illness, I say all you have to do, don't push the fear down because it'll fight back. Don't fear the fear. That's the worst thing you can do. Don't fear the fear. Ask yourself, what would I like to see instead? And start to visualize what you would like to see instead, and start to work towards creating that step by step by step.
Now, I like this. What would I like to see instead? And then you start to re-enchant your imagination and see that.
Yes.
Well, when you see that, you're producing different chemicals in your body.
Exactly. 100%.
And then you ask, how can I create that? And then you'll start getting guidance as to what an individual can do. It doesn't have to be large scale. It can be basic, small things to do, but now you're seeing and walking in that direction. So then you start to produce more different tonic rather than toxic chemicals of the body temple. Yeah. How does forgiveness play in all of this as well?
Forgiveness gives you a release. So the forgiveness I had for my dad was very, very powerful, because till the day he passed, I never thought I had won his approval. And forgiveness allows you to, so we don't forgive for the sake of the other person. Like people often say, but the person abused me or they raped me. How can I possibly forgive that? It's left me with so much trauma. So the problem is, when we don't forgive, we're holding on to the energy of that which caused the trauma. That means you're not even letting the trauma go.
Right.
So all you have to do, if you struggle with forgiveness with someone who's really harmed you, exchange the word forgiveness for the word release.
Uh-huh.
So instead of thinking, I forgive you, think in terms of, I'm releasing you from my energy.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm no longer pouring so much hatred, and because hatred is a very powerful energy, and it's one that doesn't, if you hold on to that, we may feel it sometimes, but the idea is to then release it. And so, because if you continue to feel it, you, in the end, you're harming yourself with that energy.
I like to say that unforgiveness is radical self-abuse.
You've got it in one. That's a great way to put it.
You're actually abusing yourself.
Yeah. And just one more thing I wanted to add for people who have been going through illnesses. One of the things, again, it's to do with the fear and the passion for life. When people have gone through something like cancer, and even if they get released from a hospital with no evidence of disease, they usually get told that you're in remission and you have to keep coming back because it might come back and you're in remission. So my advice for people like that is, when you have clear scans and they say there's no evidence of disease, you have to go and live your life as though it's never coming back. Yes. Even if you choose to go back for the test, that's fine. Yes. I'm not stopping you from doing that. So I say, change the word remission in your mind to, it means it's time for me to remember my mission.
Remember my mission.
For remember my mission. And so you tell yourself, I'm done with cancer. It's time for me to remember my mission and go and live my life fearlessly.
Right. And your mission has been to uplift, inspire, teach, create an environment for healing, inspire people, and let people know that anything is possible.
Yes.
Yeah. And you do it so well.
Oh, thank you. No, anything is possible. If I can come back from where I was, from that level, my body was completely shut down. My muscles had atrophied. My lungs were filled with fluid. I mean, if people were to read Dying to Be Me, they'd know to what extent my body was broken down. And if I can come back, anybody can. And what this tells me is that our soul is really the barometer of our well-being, of our physical self. In other words, it was my soul that was crying out to be heard, and that's why my body was breaking down.
Yes.
And so when we try to just fix it from the physical, that's not good enough. When you go all the way up to the metaphysical, to the esoteric,
yes,
when you start communicating with your soul, that's when your body can feel the real healing. That's when you, all the way at every level, can truly feel the real healing.
Absolutely. So let's stop dealing with just symptoms. Let's actually go to the soul, have a communion with soul, with prayer, with meditation, and with asking the right questions, so that we can really be transformed by the renewing of our mind. Anita, thank you so much for being with me today. Would you tell them the name of your book and your latest book, and how they can be in touch with you? How if people want to know more about Anita, where do they go?
Thank you. So my first book is Dying to Be Me, which is the one with my story. But my most recent book is called Sensitive is the New Strong, where I speak about being an empath and the power of sensitivity, and how the world really needs more compassionate, sensitive people. And I have, my website is anitamoorjani.com. And I have a YouTube channel where I have videos regularly, and I do workshops and events. And I also have a platform. It's a membership platform called the Anita Moorjani Sanctuary, where people can view my courses and meditations and journeys. And especially if people are going through stuff, there's a lot of content in there that can help them through it.
Thank you so much for being with me. Tell your husband I said hello.
I will. Thank you. I'll tell him.
Absolutely. And just thank you for being with us. Everyone, we've been with Anita Moorjani, Dying to Be Me. Your sensitivity is your new superpower, and you know how to get in touch with her. And thank you for tuning in to Take Back Your Mind, regardless of whatever the diagnosis is, whether it is financial, physical, mental, emotional. Everything that she teaches is applicable to the issues that we're going through today as human beings. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. Peace and dynamic blessings. Many of you have written letters about how much you really appreciate the Take Back Your Mind podcast and the life questions. So appreciate those letters. Now, our particular program here, these episodes, it's powered by spiritual purpose, but it also has powerful sponsorship. The primary sponsor is Agape International Spiritual Center. So everything that goes on here, Agape is behind it. So what I want you to do, I want you to support the Take Back Your Mind podcast. Go to agapelive.com, make a donation, put a little indication that you're supporting the podcast in that donation, or text the word give to 424-321-6243. Write the word podcast so we know you're supporting this wonderful program of Take Back Your Mind. The secondary sponsor is Neutralize. This is the company that actually produces my particular supplemental line called Adaptogen. I have the Super Greens, I have the Elevate fermented mushrooms, and a number of other products that are emerging. Just go to Neutralize.com, find Adaptogen, and you know what? Uplift your spirit, uplift your body. Remember to share all of this with your friends and support our wonderful sponsor. Have a beautiful day. Peace and radical blessings to you. I like to say the word radical because I want us to really feel radicalized in receptivity of the mighty blessings that are continually being bestowed upon us. Oftentimes people feel that they have to ask for a blessing. Now, asking is good because it makes you receptive, but be aware the blessings of grace and love and harmony and wholeness, abundance, they're always being given because that's the nature of reality. That's the nature of the presence that's never an absence. Your asking simply makes you receptive to what's already being given. It doesn't change the presence, it just changes your relationship to it. So when I say radical blessings, please be aware that you're being blessed right now. But what is your role? To be receptive. I like to say to be available, to be open, to allow, to let, to yield, to surrender, to say yes to it. Let's do that now in a moment of meditation together. Let us turn within, that is, extract your attention from what is called the external world, the world of circumstances and situations, people, places, things. Let's turn within. Put a slight smile on your face. And let us go into our interiority, our inner sanctum. And begin to pay attention to gratitude. Pay attention to the feeling of thanksgiving. As you're paying attention to this feeling of thanksgiving, this feeling of gratitude, say to yourself, I am willing and open to the blessings of the universal presence. And begin to just feel what that feels like. I am willing to be available and receptive to the blessings of the universal presence. And just pay attention to the inner feeling of receptivity, of availability. To what? the mighty universal blessings of love, intelligence, beauty, abundance, and so much more. Be still and stay open. If the attention has wandered, just come back to your availability. Say inside of your own awareness, I am receptive and available to the mighty blessings of the universal presence. Every breath we take, there is the embracing of receptivity to more good than we can imagine. We're not changing reality, we're changing our relationship to it. We are receptive to that which is real and eternal. The abundance, the wellness, the love, and more. Be still and know this and feel this. Now let us once again just give thanks. As you slowly open your eyes, maintain this state of giving thanks. Thanksgiving ultimately becomes thanks living. You live in gratitude, which means you are perpetually receptive to the blessings from the universal presence, even now. Thank you so much for participating. Have a wonderful and magnificent day. Bless you. Your time is very valuable, so I want to thank you for tuning in to Take Back Your Mind. If you want to submit a life question, please do so. Email us at podcast@michaelbeckwith.com, and perhaps one day I'll be answering your question that will touch the lives of so many. If you've enjoyed the show, you might as well submit a 5-star review. You might as well tell your friends and family. Let's spread the love. Until we meet again, maintain your awareness. Take back your mind. Because when you take back your mind, you take back your life. Peace and blessings.